welcome back, Wiz and Weebies, to the channel OW2, where today I'm going to be covering the supports finishing off this series. Sorry for the wait. Personally, just been very busy with uni, but also, I must admit, I re-recorded this like 6 times over. I naively thought, yes, I do have the most to say about supports, but like, come on, there's only 8 of them. I'm sure the video won't be that long. And let's just say that my first attempt at recording this was 3.5 hours long. It really didn't feel like it was, but it was. So, yeah, I'm trying to cut this down as much as I can. So, the main reason why this got so long is because I want to talk about something else with supports that I talked about a little bit, but didn't get so in-depth with the other characters, which is how good I think they all are. I didn't mention that too much with the other characters, because even though I play a lot of tank, support has always been really my main role. As I say, technically on this account, I played about as much tank as support, but if you count my old account on console, I was definitely a support main. As well as that, I made a claim in the previous videos, which is that I think that support is actually the strongest role in the game right now. And I stand by that, even though it's actually the least popular role in the game right now. I think that the support role is the least popular right now because it's the one with the least new content, and I would argue the one that's generally the most difficult to play. I generally don't like saying that one role is the hardest to play a lot of the time, because, you know, there's always characters that are so easy and then characters that are so hard within a role, but in fairness, the supports have a big problem on their hands now, which I've already mentioned before, but again, just to be thorough, now that there's one tank, there's no off-tank. And now that there's no stuns really on top of that, for the most part, supports just don't get any help. And that's not because their team is bad, that's just because that's how Overwatch is now. Like, in 5v5, as a support, you just gotta be able to take care of yourself. I mean, hey, if your team helps you, that's great, they're being a good teammate, but that's no longer something you can expect as a bare minimum. And again, the main reason for this is because of the removal of the off-tank. When you had 2 tanks before, usually you would have a main tank and an off-tank. The main tank would be the one actually making space, and the off-tank would make sure that the space that the main tank made was still safe for the rest of the team. They would usually have abilities that make it extremely easy to kill someone or save someone as long as they were in your team's space and not trying to flank around the enemy's backline or something. But now in Overwatch 2, it doesn't matter who you pick. You have to play the main tank regardless of which character you pick as your tank. Because there is no other tank to be the main tank. I think a really good simple example of what I'm getting at is, imagine you have an Ana and a Reinhardt on the same team. This is typically a very good combination, but here's why the Ana can't rely on the Reinhardt's help whenever she gets in trouble. Say the Reinhardt starts going in, and he's staying within the sightlines of the Ana, you know, he's not doing anything stupid, he's just walking in with his shield up with his team behind him, you're doing a push right now. And obviously the Ana's healing him as he's doing it. And then Sombra appears behind everyone on your team, and the Ana's the first at the back. So of course she hacks the Ana and starts shooting the Ana. Now let's say this Reinhardt is a very attentive player, and he hears the Sombra sounds and instantly knows what's happening, despite the fact it's all the way on the other side of the team. Even given that, what can the Reinhardt do to save you? At this point, if this was Overwatch 1, the other tank, which might be Roadhog, would hook the Sombra and kill them. Or it might be D.Va, and they might put up Defense Matrix to save you. Or it might be Zarya, who put a bubble on you and save you. These are all off-tanks. But in Overwatch 2, there isn't another tank. So the Reinhardt has to make a decision. Does he want to just ignore what's happening back there, even though he knows it's happening, and just let the Ana deal with it herself and see if she dies or not and he loses all his healing? Or does he completely drop shield, completely abandon the entire push the entire team is doing right now, and snap his neck round 180 degrees to try and charge into the Sombra, which will almost definitely miss because there's so much distance between you and the Rhine, and after all that the Sombra probably just goes invisible and runs away? You probably do save the Ana's life, but you also probably gut your own team's push because, you know, everyone else in the team is just pushing forward. And suddenly their tank isn't fighting with them and isn't shielding for them. You can see how this becomes a big problem. This is why the off-tank was so important in Overwatch 1, and this is why the off-tanks being removed in Overwatch 2 led to it being a way more flanky game. Because off-tanks existed to punish flankers, and now they kind of exist, but not really. Obviously, characters that were off-tanks are still in the game, and still, for the most part, work the same. D.Va, Zarya, Roadhog, whatever. But these off-tanks now have received buffs or other tools that make it so they are able to make space on their own. And although they do have the capabilities to peel back for their supports, this requires them to be hyper-aware of both the front line and the back line simultaneously. So yes, it is possible in Overwatch 2 for your tank to simultaneously lead pushes and keep you safe as a support, but know that if your tank is doing that, that's not them doing the bare minimum, that's them just fucking being cracked at the game and carrying the team. And I'm not saying that to put down any other support players. To say I am a support player, and it fucking sucks that this is how it is right now. But it's not like support players get nothing for it. I think this is why supports are the strongest right now, is because the devs know that the supports are the ones that are getting the short end of the stick and have definitely the steepest learning curve. So it only makes sense that they should have the highest reward for being played well. All that being said, let's cover what's new with all the supports, and after that, I'm going to cover what I think of all of them in terms of how good I think they are. I'm going to rank them all. I'm going to do it in a tier list, but I'm going to order everything as well in case you just wanted it in a 1 to 8. Because some of these supports change so little, I did forget to mention the new stuff with some of them if I just tried to do it all in one batch. So I'm going to start by just talking about the new stuff and not giving opinions necessarily yet.
I'll find my own path.
So first of all, there's the brand new support, Kiriko. Kiriko is, well, you've probably already heard a lot about it. I mean, this video's coming pretty late, but just in case you haven't, the main gimmick about her you've probably heard that's very spicy is that her main weapon is these kunais, which are very weak on their own. They only deal 40 damage. They're thrown at medium speed. They are... Oh, I forgot. Yikes. Well, I just spoiled one of her abilities, but oh well. But yeah, as you can see, these things deal triple damage for a headshot instead of double, like most characters. Which means that even though your body shots are only 40 damage, your headshots are 120, which is a considerable amount more. Which does mean that you can just dink, dink, and 2-shot squishies like Soldier, and even characters like Cass, who obviously are a little bit more durable, dink, dink. I believe you can also kill Brig. She's got 200 health, but she has armor, so... Yeah, you can also get Brig. You can just barely not get Reaper, though. I say you can't get him. At this point, you could just punch him.
Your hand-to-hand needs work.
Yeah, you could just dink, dink, dink. And usually the Reaper will be getting up close. So I've actually found that Kiriko is one of the best supports you can pick to counter Reaper a lot of the times. Because you just simply get good and you just simply land headshots and melee them. And because it like catches them off guard, because they take so much damage in such a short amount of time whenever you do get these headshots, and because they don't expect it from a support, a lot of the times they don't get a chance to heal back with the lifesteal from their passive, so it's very useful. Anyway, Kiriko's main method of healing are her healing Ofudas, these papers. Every time I throw these out, I throw 10 of them out. Each one of them heals 13 health, so that's 130 health healed every burst. I can just tap it instead of pressing and holding to throw just 2, or maybe 6, or 4, or whatever. It's always a multiple of 2. You have to change your settings for this. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know why, but the default settings for Kiriko are garbage. With the default settings, the heal is the left click and the kunai is the right click, which is stupid. I swapped them. The kunai is the left click for me and the heal is the right click. And as well as that, in the default settings, they made it so that instead of pressing and holding to throw these 10 papers, you just click it once and it toggles it to on and it just throws all 10. And if you want to throw less than 10, you double tap it and it throws 1. Do not do this. I have seen so many Kirikos that I can't blame them because they're fresh installs and it's the fault of the garbage settings they put on Kiriko, not their own fault. But they want to heal someone who's critical health and they're panicking and they're just throwing 1 paper at a time like this. And I remember when I first saw this, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I'm on critical health. For the love of God, heal me. I didn't actually say that, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. And then I realized what they're doing. They're spamming right click to heal me faster, but because they got toggle mode on, that means that the game interprets it as throw 1 paper, throw 1 paper, throw 1 paper, instead of throw as many as possible, which would be click it once. So yeah, I would definitely recommend putting it on click and hold. Yeah, anyway, there's Protection Susan. Throws a bell. When it hits a surface, an ally or an enemy, it will have that aura around it. It will provide 30 healing, which is not the main effect, it's just a small bonus. The main effect is it will also make those people essentially a quote-unquote ghost. Shots will go through them, they'll take no damage for 3/4 of a second, and it'll also have all debuffs purged off of them, which is huge, because that includes anti-heal, that includes stuns, including Reinhardt's Earth Shatter, and a Sleep Dart, that includes bleeding, that includes being on fire, that includes a lot of stuff. It's very, very useful. As you saw earlier by accident, You can teleport to your allies as Kiriko, even through walls. You get brief invincibility frames when you do that as well, although the invincibility frames did just get nerfed this patch. It used to be 0.4 seconds, and that was too much, so they nerfed it to 0.25. It's a 35-meter range limit, to give you an example of how long that is. That's 35 meters. But from that distance, you can just use that to get away. Of course, for some reason, every Japanese character in this game can just climb up walls, because of course they can. And then there's her ultimate. Now again, I'm going to try and avoid giving opinions for the most part, until we get to the later parts of this video, but I'm going to just say it right now. In Overwatch 1, there are many ultimates which I think are definitely easily contenders for best ult in the game, but I would struggle to pick one ult which is the best ultimate in the game in Overwatch 1. Overwatch 2, easy. It's Kitsune Rush. Kiriko's new ultimate is insanely powerful. So I'm going to start explaining it before I use it, because it does so much that every time I've tried to record this beforehand, it runs out before I can explain everything it's doing. So it's going to create these spirit gates, it's going to set a spirit fox forward, it's going to leave spirit gates behind it. As long as you stand near the spirit gates, you and any of your teammates all get this effect. There's no limit to how many people can be affected by this. You will get 50% increased movement speed, 50% increased attack speed, 50% increased reload speed, 50% increased heal speed, if you're a character like Moira, or, you know, Mercy, or, you know, Kiriko, obviously. You will get, most importantly though, you will get triple cooldown speed, like, as in, your abilities will come back 3 times faster than normal. So now that I've explained them all in advance, I'll show it in effect. You can shoot faster, reload faster, heal faster. I can throw down a Suzu, and you can see that the numbers are counting down at triple speed. Throw down another one. Yeah. And that might not look super impressive on its own, but that's just me using it on myself. Imagine using that on an entire team. Again, it can affect 4 or 5 people on your team simultaneously if you want it to. They just have to stand in the spirit gates. And even then, even when you leave the spirit gates, the effect persists for a second or so afterwards. So that's Kiriko. Then, I'd say, even though technically they haven't received many changes, I'd say that just because these changes affect the way they're played so enormously, Brig is next.
Breaking me down just builds me up.
So, all that's happened with Brig, well, there's 3 things, I guess. The big thing is Shield Bash changed. It used to be a 7-second cooldown, it used to deal 5 damage, it used to barely go anywhere, like a Shield Bash in Overwatch 1 probably went from about here to here. And it used to stun people for 1 second, making it insanely OP, because you didn't even have to aim it, obviously, because it's just bash. So a support just having an on-demand, okay, I just decide you're stunned, I don't even have to land a skill shot like Anna does with Sleep Dart, was obviously kind of broken. So now they made it so it doesn't stun, and it deals 50 damage instead of 5, and it has increased knockback, and it goes further, and it has a 5-second cooldown instead to compensate for the fact it doesn't stun anymore. As well as that, Shield Bash used to not trigger Brig's Inspire passive, where she heals people just for existing and being near people, as long as she's hit someone in the last 6 seconds. They buffed her shield so that before Shield Bash didn't count towards Inspire, and now it does. And as you can see, Shield Bash goes way further now. Like, way further. Like, oh my god, that's so much better. Inspire used to last 6 seconds, though, and now it only lasts 5 seconds instead of 6. I don't have a problem with that, though. That's still more than long enough most of the time, and if anything, I actually am glad to see that change, even as someone who plays a hell of a lot of Brig, because I feel like that only rewards the Brigs who play stupidly safe and boring, and just sit in the back and just... Okay, I'm just going to exist here for like 6 seconds doing nothing. Wow, I healed like 3,000 health. Okay, let me just exist for another 6 seconds. It punishes those kind of Brigs, but you don't even notice it if you play Brig more aggressively and are constantly keeping Inspire refreshed. On a side note, this isn't new or anything, but a lot of people do not know how big Brig's Inspire aura is. It is 20 meters large, even though you can't see it. Which, to put in perspective, Lucio's healing aura is only 11 meters. So we're basically talking double the size of a Lucio healing aura for Brig's Inspire passive. Not to mention, I just realized I didn't even mention yet, this new support passive. I think I've mentioned it in previous videos, but just for the sake of, you know, being thorough. The new support passive allows it so that, as any support, if you manage to go, I believe it's 2 seconds without getting hurt, then you'll start healing 15 health a second until you next get hurt. Or until you hit full health, of course. This is extremely good with Brig because you can just put up your shield, and you can literally start regenerating health mid-fight, even if you don't have Inspire up, which, yes, Inspire does heal yourself. That's not a new change, by the way, I just thought I'd mention that in case you didn't already know. yeah, you can literally just be damaged and then mid-fight put up your shield, and the damage to the shield doesn't interrupt your healing passive, so you can just start healing mid-fight and then drop your shield again when it's about to break and all that. The last change is an indirect one. In Overwatch 1, I mentioned there was multiple types of overhealth, and in Overwatch 2, they simplified it all down to just one type, the screen type. Unfortunately, this indirectly nerfed Brig, because she used to give a special type of overhealth, which was armor and overhealth combined, and now that doesn't exist anymore, so Rally only gives overhealth. However, they are apparently planning, well, not in the near future, but in the future, to completely replace Brig's ult, now that it, is a little bit less useful, with how it's basically just overhealth now. It's like a mini Transcendence now. From there, I'd say that Mercy's the one who then received the next most changes. Essentially, there was something in Overwatch 1 which was called the Mercy Super Jump, which I imagine the vast majority of people will be aware of, but again, just to be thorough, it was a physics bug technically, but it's one of those things where even though it's a bug, like, it was very consistent and you could learn to use it, and it was so well known in the community and such a just inherent part of playing Mercy well at a high level that like it was very widely accepted as a part of the game, even though technically it was an unintentional bug. Essentially, if I remember the inputs correctly, again, I'm not your resident Mercy expert, but you would, and again, I can't do it now because they've changed it obviously, I'm going to get to the changes in a moment. It would be that you would use Guardian Angel, the second your feet left the ground when you use Guardian Angel, you would tap and hold crouch. You would wait until you were just about to reach your target, like you're just slowing down at the end of your Guardian Angel. And then you would, while still holding crouch, press and hold space and look up into the sky just as you do it. And you would launch yourself into the air by doing this. If you didn't look up into the sky, you could still get a jump like this. It wouldn't be exactly like that, because again, they changed it. It looks kind of like that. You kind of just go through them rather than going into the sky. I don't know the exact logic behind this, but I think it's something to do with when you crouched mid-air, it made it so Mercy's hitbox changed, and her feet were further off the ground than the game expects, and so it kind of gets a bit confused when you finally reach your target and then you press jump, it kind of just like launches you up. So essentially, because this was always a bug, but was always a very important part of playing Mercy, in Overwatch 2 they wanted to make it an intended feature, while still making it the same as much the same as possible. I have mixed feelings on this. I think that it's a good idea on paper, but the old Mercy Super Jump was not a very difficult, like, finicky glitch to do and had very consistent behavior. If it was very inconsistent and unintuitive, I would say I was kind of in favor of this. But it was very consistent and surprisingly easy for me to learn. I mean, I say that. I wasn't very good at doing the launching upwards version of the jump. I mostly did the version of the jump where I just launched myself forwards. That was easier for me. But even that on its own was insanely fun to mess around with, and back when it was an unintended feature, an unintended kind of bug with the game, it was very, very customizable. I don't know. With the right inputs, you could angle your movements to do basically anything you wanted. It was just kind of a high skill ceiling kind of thing, where you just had to put in the time. Whereas now, because it's implemented as an intentional feature, well, that does mean it's rarer for it to do unexpected things, because it did sometimes do some weirdness every now and then before. It does also mean that a lot of the appeal of it is gone. So now, you get that bar that you've probably been noticing, you just tap crouch. Literally, all I did there was I pressed Q, and I tapped crouch, and you get that massive super jump. You tap it just as you reach the end. The bar shows how charged the super jump is. If you press it early, you won't go as high. Oh, that's not just because of that. Yeah, you won't go as high if you press it early. Yeah, that's basically it. You press space if you want to do it forwards. You press crouch if you want to do it up. And don't get me wrong, this does make it a lot more easy and accessible for newer players who don't know about Mercy Super Jumping. But, okay, my main problem with this is, the main reason I'm mixed is originally I just had a big problem with it because I thought, not that Mercy's an easy support to play. In fact, I would say that Moira is easier to play than Mercy. I don't know if that's a very controversial opinion, but that's what I would say. But I definitely think no one would argue that she's one of the least mechanically intensive supports to play. And it always felt to me like the Mercy Super Jump being something that required a decent amount of skill and, like, you know, deep knowledge of these kind of combinations of inputs to be able to get consistent and effective results with it and, like, kind of bend it however you want it to work for you, was part of the reason why it was so good to play Mercy, was because, yes, the basics of just healing the right people and moving around a lot didn't require a lot of mechanical skills and were very simple and kind of laid back, but the, intricacies of having the perfect movement with Mercy were insanely deep. Now, though, it feels kind of dumbed down. Even though she's basically as mobile as she used to be before this existed, it's so much easier now. Like, before it was like, okay, right, so I have to press Q, hold crouch, wait until I'm just there, get the right timing on the jump input, flip my camera in the correct direction, and then, like, let go of crouch and then hold it. All these kind of button inputs I kind of have to memorize and get it correct and all that, and just get used to doing that every single time, non-stop, every time I fight someone. And, like, that's, like, so much more engaging than just Q, crouch. So, I said I'm mixed on this note, though, not all negative. The only reason that I'm not all negative on this is I have to admit, they did say that they wanted to try and keep the feeling that you have a lot of options with it. And I'll give them this. They did do that. Because, first of all, I've already mentioned how you can go up or forwards with it. Well, you can also go backwards. And I believe in Overwatch 1 this was something that was possible, but it was a tech that was, like, very advanced. Like, I saw people Mercy super jumping all the time. I never saw anyone doing the backwards super jump. Like, that's something that was extremely rare to see. So, I must admit, I couldn't tell you how you do it, but as far as I'm aware, it was very, very difficult. So I'm glad that that's something that's now more accessible, I guess. As well as that, I'm pretty sure this is brand new. I'm going to be embarrassed if it's not, but I'm 99% sure this is brand new. You can also now cancel Guardian Angel whenever you want to just fall down, which is pretty cool. You couldn't do that before. So I have to admit, you do have more options for when you do the super jump. Because before as well, you could only do the super jump once you had reached your target, as I mentioned. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And I guess now, if you wanted to, you could fly towards it and then super jump early if, like, say, they're in a sight line of something really dangerous, but you still want to use them as a way to super jump. There are upsides to this change, but generally I think it trends negative. I could hear out any more suggestions they have, but I'm a little bit mixed on this. The last thing is, though, there is still some advanced tech here. And again, I am not the person to ask about this really, but just to give you the very basics. You can now basically just infinitely fly around one person, even on flat ground, and never touch the ground as Mercy, by doing a little something, well, I'll show you how it goes if you try to do it normally, and then I'll show you how I do it, like, with this kind of tech. So normally, the way you do it is obviously just fly to them, super jump, float. Fly to them, super jump, float. And this sometimes does work, but the longer you do this, you start to lose height. Now, I must admit, I'm not sure if you always lose height. Actually, I think I might have gained height there, never mind. Okay, so you might not even need to do this tech to get infinite. Yeah, never mind. Okay, I thought you lost height from doing that, but I think it's as long as you fly away, you're fine. Never mind. Well, either way, there's still an advanced tech you can do to stay in the air for longer and not get as close to the ground before you have the Guardian Angel again. Where basically, if you pay close attention, you'll notice obviously when I press Q, the ability icon glows blue while I'm flying. And you'll notice when I do a super jump, even once I've already done the super jump, it stays blue until I reach the peak of my jump, which it doesn't have to. And all that time is time that the ability could be recharging where it's not. So basically, if I cancel Guardian Angel instantly, as soon as I super jump, I can get it back way sooner, and it doesn't affect my momentum at all. And this way, you can stay way higher in the air constantly at all times. Anyway, that's Mercy. I don't think they received any other changes, except for... Oh, wait, yes. Of course, Mercy already had the health regeneration passive that every other support just got, so she just gets an extra passive which improves the health regeneration from the support passive. I don't know how much the increase is off the top of my head, but I don't think it's that much. I don't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 20 health per second, like just under, and the base is 15 health per second. To put it in perspective, with Zenyatta's shield health, he actually regenerates health faster than Mercy does. So this isn't a lot. Although in fairness, there is a reason why it's not a lot. It used to be a lot in the first beta, and Mercy was practically unkillable in the first Overwatch beta, because it was something stupid like nearly 40 health per second health regeneration, and it was just... You didn't shoot a Mercy for 5 seconds and she was full health again. It wasn't great. Anyway, what would even be the next one I'd go to? I guess it'd be Zenyatta. Zenyatta got very few changes, but they got one that's very... it exists alright. I actually really like this change. It's really cool, and it's like the kind of thing that's probably really easy to code, but like it's extremely fun. That being, well, speaks for itself. Time to do the funny Sparta move. Sparta. Anyway, so basically, yeah, you now have a passive called Snap Kick. Your kick, which used to just be like every other quick melee in the game, just visually different and not actually doing anything new, is now a melee which deals 45 damage instead of 35 like everyone else's, and also acts as a Lucio boop. I believe it's actually the exact same knockback as Lucio boop, at least provided you get the same angle as you did with a Lucio boop. Again, angle can affect it a lot here. So yeah.
I believe I've won this round.
That's pretty helpful. It mainly exists because, of course, I mentioned the game is way more dive-heavy now, with no off-tanks and basically no stuns. And Zen gets countered harder than any other character in the game by dive. So he needed something to get dive characters off of him. And, well, there's the kick. Anna received a whole bunch of nerfs, and I'm not happy about it. She got one buff alongside it, but I don't even think the buff is good. So the only buff she got is that her sniper rifle now has 3 more bullets in the clip. Now, that might sound fine, but like seriously, let me put in perspective just how rarely you're actually going to need those 3 extra bullets.
I'm no easy mark.
It takes that long to empty a clip. As opposed to before, when it took this long. Did you even notice the difference? So yeah, I thought this buff was not much to compensate for the nerfs. As for the nerfs, what are they? Well,
Now recovering.
anti-nades now deal only 60 damage instead of 100. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. But as well as that, did you notice something else? Let me do it one more time. It wears off faster as well. It used to last 5 seconds, now it lasts 4. Might sound like a small change, but my god, anti-nades feel so bad now. I know that higher level players are saying that the opposite, that anti-nades with Ana feel so good, especially now with the support passive. You don't have to use nades to heal yourself as much, so you can use them offensively way more. And I imagine that is the case at higher level play. But when I'm playing with randoms, or maybe just one teammate who's actually I'm in a Discord call with, it's extremely rare that I get an anti-nade on like a nice crowd of targets and someone actually kills them before they walk off. When it was 5 seconds, I felt like it was just barely enough time that most of the time, as long as the person I anti-naded was near enough to my teammates and not out of the way, that someone would come along and kill them. But now, even with the new ping system, the amount of times as Ana that I like nade 3 people, like directly in front of us, not hiding behind walls or anything, literally right in front of my entire team, and I anti-nade them all, and then I just watch my entire team shoot people who aren't anti-naded, and then turn around to shoot the anti-naded people after the anti-nade's worn off. It hurts to watch. And yeah, I feel like I never get value off of anti-nade except for the 60 damage anymore. It feels like it's very rare, unless I'm against a character who's specifically very good to anti-nade like Roadhog, for the anti-nade to actually get a lot of value. Again, I imagine this is not the case at high-level play, because at high-level play people would actually, you know, quickly capitalize on it, but definitely where I'm at, it feels like people do not capitalize on anti-nades anymore with that 1 second less time to react. Especially because before, it was easier to capitalize on anti-nades when you could use stuns to keep people in place and make sure they didn't slip away. But now, if someone's anti-naded, they translocate out if they're Sombra, they slash out if they're Genji, they teleport out if they're Tracer, or maybe even just recall. There's just, it feels like naded targets get away so much more often without getting killed. That is, unless I scope in and I finish the job. But of course, you know, that's another kind of skill diff kind of thing. As well as that, sleep darts. They now have a 15-second cooldown instead of a 12-second cooldown. This is the only nerf, which I will say, I actually agree with. I was very confused initially. My initial reaction was, what the fuck? But I realized why this nerf was made, and it's because if you actually look at every single character in this game right now, Ana is literally the only character in the entire roster who has a real stun, not like a half a second long stun like Doomfist's Punch or Orissa's Javelin, that lasts longer than a second, that isn't an ultimate. if you look at every stun in the game that isn't like a half a second one, there's Doomfist Charged Punch, which can stun for 1 second, but that requires you to get charged from Power Block, which we've already explained how that's impossibly difficult to do without dying. So, I mean, at that point, if you get that 1 second stun, good on you. And what else? I guess Maze Freeze, which only works with her ultimate now, and I guess Ryan's Earth Shatter, which again is an ultimate. So I can see why they increased the cooldown of Sleep Dart at least, because it's the only long-term stun in the game that still exists that isn't a literal ultimate. Anyway, Bap also received a lot of changes. Nothing but buffs. I don't think anyone was asking for these buffs, but he sure as hell got them. I haven't seen a single person who thought he needed buffs in the beta, but they buffed him to hell and back over the course of the betas. So his damage has been buffed so that he now deals 25 damage per shot. That might not sound like much, but remember, this is a 3-burst shot weapon on a support that's hit scan and has no spread and can headshot. What this really means is, if you're actually accurate with BAP, this is 150 damage per shot. It's a lot of damage. Like, let's really put this in perspective. You thought Kiriko was broken because, oh, if you land 2 headshots, you can, like, basically kill Reaper. I didn't even headshot all those. I think Bap is honestly maybe the best character in the entire game for dealing with Reaper. I'm not sure if the cooldown for Mortality Field changed or not, because I thought it was 30 seconds, but I didn't play Bap enough in Overwatch 1 to know if that's true. It's 25 seconds right now, so I'm just going to say that in case it changed, because I honestly don't remember if it was 30 seconds or 25 before. But the other change, which I know for certain they definitely made, is changes to Regen Burst. That is a lot more than before. You see, in Overwatch 1, Regen Burst would heal 100 health to you and 50 health to any teammates in its radius over the course of 5 seconds. So 20 health per second. Well, 20 health per second to you, 10% health per second to everyone around you. In Overwatch 2, they made a whole bunch of buffs. First of all, they made it so it gives equal healing to you and your teammates, which, to be fair, I actually like that buff. It should have been that from the start. Second of all, they finally realized that Regen Burst is kind of a stupid ability. Not in that it's like OP or anything, but in that almost every ability in Overwatch is supposed to inspire kind of decision-making thought process. It's like, oh, when do I use this? This is the best time to use this. Whereas Regen Burst is like the only ability in the game, even maybe I'd go as far as to say, where it's just like, oh, just press the button. Because Regen Burst would only be used to heal you if you were about to die as Bat. So that's it. It's just like, oh, I'm about to die. Oh, I have Regen Burst. Press the button. No thought. You know, there's no reason to think about it. Because, what, maybe you can get like 1 extra teammate in the healing burst if you just hold it, I guess? But like, you would get barely any benefit out of that. So they tried to help this, not only by making it so you can heal teammates more with it, but also by adding a new thing to it, where if the target of Regen Burst, if any of the targets have critical health when you activate it, the healing they receive is double. So they receive 200 health over the course of it. The other buff they made, you might have noticed, is that half of the health they receive is now instant. They still have to get the other half over time, but what this means is, if you've got less than half health on BAP, and you use Regen Burst, you get an instant burst of 100 health, and then you regenerate an extra 100 health over the next 5 seconds, which is, it's a lot of healing, and that, again, would apply the same to everyone around you. If you've got a full team of critical teammates around you, you can provide 500 instant health, plus another 500 health over time for a total of 1,000 healing. Lucio received little to no changes. Essentially, his Sound Barrier ultimate is more expensive to build now, but that shouldn't affect him much. If you didn't actually know this, Lucio's ultimate has actually always been the single most expensive ultimate in the game in terms of pure amount of things you have to do to like charge it up, how many points you have to earn. However, he's never felt like he's got the longest charging ultimate in the game, because that's just area healing. If you weren't aware, area of effect healing is like the #1 method to gain ult charge quickly, which is why Lucio gains ult charge so fast, despite the fact that, you know, he has the most expensive ultimate in the game, just because, well, he heals everyone in an area just for existing, like Brig does. Only he does it all the time instead of having to activate Inspire. So the only things that really changed with Lucio is, as I say, his ultimate got a bit more expensive, but that shouldn't change much. It still charges pretty fast as long as you're area healing. And the other thing is that his self-heal, when he activates Healing Aura, has been reduced by quite a bit. Now, it's only the healing he does to himself. The healing he provides to everyone else with the Healing Aura is the same as it always was. but the healing that he provides to people, to his own self, is reduced mostly because of the new support passive. In the betas, well, already right now, in release, Lucio is so difficult to kill in Overwatch 2. He was already an extremely slippery support, and now he's a slippery support who can get health regeneration just for existing while not getting shot. When, I mean, let's be real, Lucio's specialty is existing and not getting shot. And at least before, he had to have healing aura up to be able to self-heal while he was, trying to stall a payload or something, and while he was in danger. But now he doesn't even need healing aura up, because now he can keep his speed aura up and still receive health regeneration from his passive. But yeah, before you could switch between healing and speed, and you would get basically double the healing passive because you had the healing aura stacked on top of the support passive, and yeah, you can see how Lucio could be nearly unkillable. But yeah, that's the only changes he received. And Moira is by far the least changed. She did have a potential change proposed in the betas. There was a brief period in the final beta where they gave her a brand new ability, but they ended up not deciding to go through with it. The brand new ability was that essentially when she used her orb, it wasn't one ability. Her healing orb and her damage orb were two separate abilities. You would still press E to use them, and then you'd press left click or right click to decide which one you wanted to use, but they had their own separate cooldowns, although they're both cooldowns were longer than normal. And the damage orb was changed to Necrotic Orb or Enfeebling Orb, they kept changing the name. Which was a smaller orb which didn't move slowly and didn't attach to people. You threw it like an explosive, and when it hit a target, it would deal a small amount of area damage, and anyone affected would get minus 80% damage for the next few seconds. Which is a cool ability, and they added it to the game because they realized Moira has no utility, and they really want to give her some kind of skill shot, some kind of playmaking ability to make a real difference in a game. But they decided not to go through with it, because although in general situations it was a relatively balanced ability, the main problem was that it was a normal ability that was often able to completely shut down entire ultimates and entire ultimate combos way too easily. Like, imagine someone nanoblades and you just shink, and then their nanoblade is like tickling you with a feather. And it's like, they can just do that every 15 seconds or whatever. You can see how that was a problem. So in the end, the only change to Moira that went through was a very small one, which is that the amount of self-heal she receives by sucking people got reduced, but she still gets self-heal. That's mostly just because she already gets self-heal from the support passive, and she just generally is a bit adapted to 5v5 very well, because Fade obviously makes her escape really easily, and, that just means you get health regeneration all the time. You don't really need extra healing just from, the suck. So that's all the new stuff. Now let me talk about every single support, how good I think they are. So I want to put this all cards on the table right now. I'm going to do this in the form of a kind of tier list, even though I'm also going to rank them by number, mostly because I plan to just rank them by number before, but I feel like it's a bit misleading, because some of them are extremely close together in my opinion, like practically I could swap them, like depending on my opinion changing on the day, whereas some of them are miles apart and I couldn't see them changing anytime soon. So that's why I want to do it in a kind of tiered way. But I want to make it clear, I'm only putting some of these as low as D tier, because I think that, obviously, it's not really helpful if I just say, they're all less tier, I'll say it like this. If this was open queue, I would always rather have a support, even someone picking the worst support in the game, in my opinion, over just about any DPS. Now, of course, that's provided that this player is at the same skill level with both characters. Obviously, if we're talking, would I rather have, like, a garbage Anna or, like, a cracked McCree? Yeah, I'd rather have the cracked McCree. But, like, assuming they are the same skill level with both characters, I would basically always rather they have pick a support than a DPS in almost every situation. So even the worst support in the game, if I was to rank them compared to every other character in this entire game without taking roles into account, I would probably rank them like at C tier probably, even the worst in my opinion. That being said, if we're talking only about supports, someone has to be at the bottom. I think that Mercy is currently the worst support in the game. Now, one big thing I'm taking into account with this, with my criteria, is I don't want to have exceptions where it's like, oh, but if this one teammate just works really well with you, then you can do all this and it's great. Because if you have to rely on your teammates doing good with what you're providing and doing above average, then it blurs the line between, is this really you doing good as this support, or is this you getting carried? Now, I'm not saying that if you do play a support who, as in my eyes, requires a really good teammates to work, that does mean you're carried. but I'm saying it's hard to draw the line. So I don't really want to say, like, oh, yeah, this support is really amazing if you just have an extremely powerful DPS on your team and they carry the game and then you provide them this. Yeah, this support wins every game then. It's like, okay, but is that because the support's good or because the DPS is good? You know, it blurs the lines a bit. You can see why this applies to Mercy. You see, here's the thing. Mercy's healing output, first of all, I have to get this out of the way. I'm going to hit you with the dark truth that no one wants to hear if they're a more casual Overwatch player. You probably think of Mercy as the main healer in the game. As in, like, the number one, we just need more healing, pick Mercy kind of character. That is very, very far from actually being true. Not only is Mercy not the best healer in the game in terms of pure healing output, but on top of that, she's not even the second best. Or the third best. I wouldn't even say she's the fourth best. I would consider Mercy an off support. Now you're probably thinking that's crazy. Every game I have a Mercy, they tend to have the most healing. So let me explain why that is. Mercy tends to have the most healing most games because she literally can't do anything else unless she puts away her staff, which is meant to be, you know, her most powerful thing, since her pistol isn't supposed to be that strong. So, the Mercy is probably going to spend the entire game doing nothing but healing. So her healing output, how much healing she can do in a given amount of time, isn't that high, but she's spending the entire game doing nothing but healing for the most part, whereas an Ana is splitting her attention between healing, landing sleep darts, and throwing nades.
No recovering.
That's multiple things, so even though the Ana has a higher healing output, she can deal more healing to a single target and keep them alive more easily if they're taking damage. You know, she can out-heal the damage more effectively. It doesn't appear like she does more healing sometimes just because she can't be doing healing all the time, whereas Mercy basically always is healing and very rarely pulls out her pistol or stops to do anything else. As well as that, I think what would really well demonstrate this is if I just go up to this bot right now and let me wait until they're really low on health, I want you to see how long it actually takes for me to fully heal this bot with my healing beam. Oh, they died. This one. That's only a 200 health bot. That took a while. How long does it take with Ana, who, you know, you might not consider necessarily a more powerful healer than Mercy, typically?
Broken world behind.
Done. Much faster. And of course, this is a case where it's unambiguously not even because, oh, this is an area healer and this is a single target healer. No, Mercy is also a single target healer. In terms of main supports and off supports, there's an argument to me it's not a very important distinction, but if you were to ask me, and again, this kind of depends on who you'd ask, let's start with the uncontroversial ones. I don't think anyone would argue that Ana is a main support. No one would really argue that Moira is a main support. Yes, the stereotype of the DPS Moira who doesn't heal and just deals damage. That's someone playing Moira wrong. If someone's playing Moira correctly, she actually has the highest healing output in the entire game to compensate for a low amount of utility. And as well as that, the vast majority of people would call Bap a main healer. I personally struggle to reach the same healing numbers as Bap as I would with Ana or Moira, but I think part of that is just because Bap can very much be played either in a DPS mode or a heal mode. You know, it's hard to do both at once with Bap, although possible. So a lot of the times with Bap, my healing can fluctuate wildly between massive healing games and very little healing games, but then when those games where I have very little healing, I'm often dealing a lot more damage and being more of a kind of DPS with some healing on the side. The one that gets a bit more controversial is I would honestly call Brig a main healer. People say that Brig's healing output is low, and I can only imagine that's because they're too used to getting bad Brigs on their team. Because if you actually keep Inspire up and prioritize staying alive, which are two things which are hard to do at the same time, but if you do both of those things at the same time, then yeah, Brig's healing output is actually some of the best in the game. I'm pretty sure, like, if you assume you have a Brig who always has Inspire up, which is the perfect scenario, but, like, just assume that, I'm pretty sure she has the highest healing output of any support in the game. She probably even out-heals Moira. And yes, her heal packs alone without Inspire don't often heal the tank up enough, but but that's one person in your team. And the heal packs alone definitely are enough for your other support and 3 DPS, because it heals more than half their health with just one of them, and you get 3 of them. So I'd actually argue that Brig is a main healer, but some people might consider her an off support. Kiriko's in a bit of a grey area, but I think she leans more towards main healer. She's kind of similar to Bap, but even more intensely so, in that your healing with her is going to fluctuate wildly. With Bap, you can kind of heal and damage at the same time. With Kiriko, you can barely do it. As Kiriko, you're usually either going to be spending all your time healing or all your time dealing damage. So while I've definitely had games with Kiriko where I've only had 2,000 healing by the end, but I've had basically as much eliminations as the DPS, I've also had other games where I've only had a couple of eliminations, but I've had like 5-digit healing numbers in a quick play game as Kiriko. So I think that Kiriko can be played as either. It depends on your playstyle, or what your other support picked. Because obviously, if your other support picked a main healer, you often don't have to play Kiriko as a main healer anymore, because you don't need that much healing most of the time. You then can play her as an off support, whereas if the other person picks an off support, you can play her as a main support. So all that aside, the main off supports in the game would be Lucio, Mercy, and Zenyatta, in my opinion. And if you don't believe me, try and play some games with Lucio Mercy, Lucio Zen, or Mercy Zen, and see if your healing is enough. I guarantee you, you will be dying to not getting healed fast enough. These 3 support comps, Lucio Mercy, Lucio Zen, and Mercy Zen, are basically the worst possible support pairings in the entire game you can get. The only one out of these that I could see maybe working is Mercy Zen, if you're getting a hell of a lot of damage done to prevent needing so much healing in the first place with both Damage Boost and Discord Orb. And the Zen is cracked and is farming Transcendences, so every time you do need a lot of healing, he just uses Transcendence. Otherwise, yeah, all 3 of those support pairings, you don't get nearly enough healing unless you just simply, play good enough that it doesn't matter. Anyway, getting a bit sidetracked there, but I really wanted to explain that concept in full, because so many people, obviously, I can't even blame them, because, it is very unintuitive, but so many people think Mercy has enormous healing output. And I know they just don't know any better, but like it's so frustrating when like I mention, we might need a bit more healing on this team, and then someone's like, oh, I got you, and they swap to Mercy. It's like, I'm really glad that you swapped to me and you're trying to help out, but like that's like the worst one you could have swapped to. Oh boy. But yeah, anyway, getting back onto why I actually think Mercy's bad. So her healing output isn't that high. The only reason why she's really good for it is because it's just convenient, It's non-aim based, so you can't miss your healing like you can with Ana. It's single target, which means, well, as I say, it's just convenient. It's constant, so it's reliable. There's got to be a moment where the healing's down for a second, like if Ana's reloading, so that you can, constantly keep the healing non-stop up. But all that aside, you are essentially playing a support who deals less damage and heals less. So why would you want to play Mercy? The reason why, there's only really 2 you could give. You either want res or you want damage boost. One or the other. I think the fact that you might want res is kind of cancelled out by one thing. Yes, res is a very, very powerful ability, bordering on as powerful as a weak ultimate, but as a result of that, Mercy gets an ultimate so bad that I honestly think it's worse than res, even though res is an ability, and that is Valkyrie. This ultimate, as far as I see, is almost always only used if the Mercy is about to die, and then they fly up into the sky and don't die. Unless there's a good hit scan on the enemy team and then they die anyway. And then this ultimate is borderline useless. Yeah, I do not think that Valkyrie is a very good ult at all. It can obviously use the chain healing. I'd say that's really the only other use of it, is like if you're in a situation where you have no area healers around and everyone's damaged simultaneously and you need to heal everyone up quickly as Mercy, yeah, maybe you'd use the chain healing. But besides that, Valkyrie really ain't useful. The only other use case I can think of is I do sometimes pop Valkyrie if there's like an Ashe or a Widowmaker that no one is dealing with and is like ripping apart, especially if you have an Ana as our other support. And I know that Ana's struggling because they're getting out-sniped and getting countered by the snipers and no one's dealing with it. Then I just pop Valkyrie and like murder the Widowmaker for the Ana so that we can get some actual healing going. But still, you can get the idea. You do not get a lot out of Valkyrie. It is one of the worst ults in the game when most supports have some of the best ults in the game. It's quite a heavy hit. So I think the fact that Res is an extremely powerful normal ability on Mercy is cancelled out by the fact that it comes at the cost of her ultimate being one of the worst in the entire game. So that really just leaves damage boost. So yeah, this is my opinion really on Mercy. I genuinely think that compared to other supports, the only reason you would ever pick her is damage boost. Now in fairness, damage boost is a fully valid reason to pick Mercy. It's a 30% damage boost, constantly, on whoever you keep the boost on, And although 30% might not sound like much, that really affects some huge breakpoints for good DPS players, especially hit scans. So essentially, if you have a DPS on your team that you know is a good player, and you know will make your time worthwhile if you just pocket them and give them damage boosts, especially hit scans, especially characters like Sojourn, Cass, Soldier, Widowmaker, Ashe, all those kind of characters, then yeah, you can get an enormous amount of value off of Mercy. You can carry games with that. I actually think that's one of the best ways to flip a game that you're already losing, is have someone switch Sojourn who's a good hit scan, and have one of your supports go Mercy and pocket the Sojourn. The problem is, as I said, that fully relies on your Sojourn actually being good at the game. If your Sojourn isn't good at the game, then you are playing a support which heals less than every other support in the game, deals less damage than every other support in the game, has one of the most underwhelming ults in the game, and really all you have to show for it is res, which again is mostly just something to compensate for how garbage your ult is. So, yeah. All that being said, again, if I was to put Mercy in a tier list of all characters, not just in the support category, I'd still put her as high up as like C tier, just like okay. Because I think that, well, as I say, all supports are so good right now that I'm only being so harsh on Mercy because I don't see where you pick her compared to the competition. Moving on, the other character in D tier, but higher than Mercy, is Zenyatta.
Amid discord, we will find tranquility.
So this is a very, very weird one. There's a huge asterisk next to this one. Zenyatta only has two states. I'm breaking the game, or I'm garbage right now. This is because he is inherently designed in a way that I am not a fan of, but I don't see it changing anytime soon. You see, Discord Orb is a pretty powerful ability, if you weren't aware of that. This guy is now taking 25% extra damage because I looked at him. And there's no range limit on this, there's no time limit on this, there's no cooldown for reapplying it. In fairness, it does break if I break eye contact for 2 full seconds. But then I can instantly reapply it. I can only have it on one target at once, but you only need it on one target at once. And this is not 25% damage, like, extra when I shoot them. This is 25% extra damage when anyone deals any amount of damage to them. Which is a huge, huge power to be able to have. This is something that's just hard to describe unless you are a tank player and you know the pain of Discord Orb. All I'll say is, pay attention to how many games it feels like you can't even make it out of spawn without dying in half a second. Pay attention to how many of those games there's a Zenyatta in the enemy's backline that you never see die. Because I can tell you, half the time I have a game where it feels like we can't even get out of spawn without dying, it's because our tank is being turned to mincemeat within 3 seconds of leaving the door because they get Discord Orbed and focused down by everyone. And then because we have no tank, we can't even make it out of spawn because we can't make space. This single ability is easily, I have no problems calling Discord Orb the single most broken ability in the entire game that isn't an ultimate. So why is Zen D tier? Because the devs eventually realized, oh shit, this is kind of a broken ability. So the philosophy here with Zen is, okay, he gets a broken ability, but there's a reason he gets to have a broken ability. It's because he's the only support with no tools to save himself if he gets dived. If he gets dived, can he heal himself? No. If he gets dived, can he stun them? No. Can he knock them away? Well, kinda with Snap Kick, but he can't knock them far enough away, really. Like, this helps, but it doesn't really solve the problem. And of course, that was a new addition anyway.
A fall is merely a chance to rise again. Later.
And he doesn't have any methods to escape either, because Zen can only ever move this fast. He can't move any faster, he can't launch himself into the air, he can't do anything. When Zen gets jumped, his only option is to kick them away a little bit, and then hope he can kill them just by shooting them before they die. Now, in fairness, their DPS is basically the same amount as an actual DPS character to compensate. Oh yeah, I forgot Reaper's got 250 health.
A touch of wisdom.
Well, if we were talking about Squishy or even the Cass, then yeah, you could just 2-tap them like that. So yeah, your DPS is really high, but it is still a problem that your mobility is so low. And as well as that, if you actually look at Zen's hitbox, his head is quite big and very unprotected. and it's just generally very easy to shoot at a Zen. Like, a lot of characters in this game, you kind of forget sometimes, the vast majority of characters in this game have very thin and awkward hitboxes. It's actually quite hard to shoot, like, probably more than half the cast in this game that isn't a tank. But Zen, on the other hand, unlike some supports, especially like Moira or Mercy or Lucio or Kiriko especially, Zen has a very easy hitbox to shoot. All this said, yeah, the entire idea with Zen is that he gets to have the most broken ability in the game, because if he ever gets dived, he's fucked. Now in Overwatch 1, he was the single most broken support in the game, because the answer to this was simple. Just run Brig. And then the second that anyone tried to jump the Zen, the Brig who's standing next to the Zen just shield bashes someone, the Zen discords them, and he 2-taps them while they're still stunned. And then you never kill the Zen. And then a Zen just gets to sit there, making everyone take 25% damage permanently for the rest of the entire game, permanently providing healing, permanently providing an enormous amount of damage from a distance, and permanently building charge for Transcendence, which is also a contender for one of the most powerful ults in the game, with its basic invincibility basically provided to everyone around you just for being near you. You know, you might not feel it so much in games with randoms. I mean, I must admit, I don't always. But when you actually have a coordinated team, you can see how Transcendence is an absolutely game-breakingly powerful ultimate. So yeah, I could go into way more detail, but that's part of why the other videos got way too long. I really wanted to put in perspective how crazy it is to get a 25% damage boost, but I think that's part of why the last video was so long. Because unless you simply experience it yourself, it's hard to convince someone why a 25% damage boost is such a big problem. But I guess to try and do it in as short words as possible, you might be like, oh, the Mercy damage boost is more though, isn't it? It's a 30% boost. But it's not. It is 30%, which is more than 25%, but it's 30% on one person. This is 25% per person shooting this one target. And up to 5 people can shoot them. If you do have people focusing targets like they should at high level play, this means you can just make someone take plus 125% damage effectively for fucking looking at them. You can make someone take more than double damage if you have a focused team just for looking at them. Now in fairness, even though dive does counter Zen, with the addition of this snap kick, Zen's pretty good at just dueling, even Genji and stuff like that. So you might be thinking, shouldn't Zen be higher? And I think there's definitely an argument to put him higher, which is why he's got an enormous asterisk on his placement in D tier. But the main reason I'm not putting him higher is, I do agree that Zen can still be broken even with dive being good, if your teammates know they have to play around you. If your teammates know, oh, we have a Zen, we get enormous value if we keep the Zen alive, let's make sure we're always staying near the Zen. Let's make sure we always keep an eye out for the Zen. Let's make sure that our other support, like, I don't know, that Kiriko always keeps their protection Suzu for Zen. Let's make sure that, like, we always keep an eye out for Sombra so Sombra doesn't kill Zen and all that. If your team does all that, then yeah, Zen is, like, the best support in the game, no question. But, again, this is that whole, if your team does this well. Again, I think I want to try and rank these based on partially how well you can solo carry with them. And I do not think Zen is a solo carry pick. I think if you want to play Zen, you have to trust your team to just be good and competent at the game. And, you know, if you can't trust them to do that, then you can't really play Zen. So, yeah. Moving on to C tier, I would say that next is Moira. This is kind of interesting because,
I will find the key.
Oh no, what happened? Oh, I just pressed escape. That was weird. But yeah, Moira's interesting because I actually, very early on, before I actually even played the betas, I was wondering if Moira would be the best support in the game now, which is funny because she was the worst support in the game at the end of Overwatch 1. Despite her having probably the best damage on average as a support. Like, not actually the best damage if you're, like, a good player and you just land shots, but, like, you know, average players who don't always land shots, you know, Moira usually gets the most damage in games like that. Just from the fact that she's a water lane, and she can chase people down real easy, and she gets a lot of damage up from just damage orbs being hard to dodge. Combined with the fact that she has the highest healing output out of every support in the game, you know, on paper it looks like, wow, Moira's crazy good, isn't she? But then, of course, I've mentioned before why she isn't really good. She has no utility. Most supports in the game, I say most, every support in the game has utility. Ana has sleep darts and anti-nades. These are irreplaceable utilities that are extremely useful in a game. Baptiste has Immortality Field. It's hard to use, but when it's in the right place at the right time, it's a game winner. Brig is probably the closest other support to having no utility, but I would say that having a personal shield is a utility. I would say that having the area healing the size she does would even be enough to count as a utility, even though it's just her healing method, just because it's such an enormous area that it's like you're healing people you don't even know you're healing. And lastly, I would say that the overhealth granted from her rally, since it persists for about 40 seconds, I think it is, or 30, after the ult ends, counts as a utility. Obviously, Kiriko has a lot of utility, both with Kitsune Rush providing like 10 different kinds of utility, and Protection Suzu providing debuffs and invincibility. That's another utility. Lucio obviously provides utility through speed, Mercy obviously provides it through damage boost, and Zen provides it through Discord Orb. What does Moira have? Well, she has damage, she has healing, she has more damage, she has more healing, and she has her ultimate, Coalescence, which provides even more damage and even more healing. You see the problem here. It is a lot of damage and healing, more than any other support most of the time. But it's just damage and healing, nothing else. As a side note, this is why a lot of Moiras tend to have a bit of an inflated ego. I don't mean to go in too hard. If you're a good Moira, then that's fine. But like, sometimes people get an inflated ego as Moira because Moira kind of manipulates the scoreboard a little bit, or more like everyone else is worse at massaging the scoreboard. Because Moira provides no utility. Utility is the kind of thing that's hard to measure on a scoreboard. The only thing she provides is damage and healing, which is easy to measure on the scoreboard, which is why you often see Moiras getting the most damage and the most healing, even if they were the worst teammate on their team. Because, well, simply put, that's what Moira's made to do. Get a whole lot of damage and get a whole lot of healing. Now, while that might have been very useful in Overwatch 1 when the meta was double shield, and I say that, it wasn't necessarily, but I felt it was more useful than some people give it credit. Just Moira wasn't meta enough for it to be useful. But in Overwatch 2, it's less useful because where are the barriers? We don't have double shield anymore. Orisa doesn't even have a shield anymore, and Reinhardt's shield got nerfed into the ground. So being able to go through shield isn't much of a useful utility anymore. So yeah, you can see my problem with Moira. Now, why did I think she looked really good before I played the betas? That is because, just generally, first of all, I do think she is well adapted to 5v5. I think that's part of the reason why she receives so little changes. Is because, in fairness, the way she's built already, I said one of the main issues with playing support is that now you just have to fend for yourself. If you get jumped, tough fucking luck, you know. You either deal with it yourself or you die a lot of the time. But if you're Moira and you get jumped, yeah. You know, I actually didn't realize this. I thought my least played support was going to be Baptiste, but it's actually Moira. Now, I don't play Moira that often, as I say. I did not know Fade had a fucking 6-second cooldown. I thought it was 8. I always misread it as 8. It is insane that you have, essentially, the best escape tool in the entire game, as far as I can see, on a 6-second cooldown. And in fairness, Moira might have pushed the power levels if she was released at an earlier stage in the beta. When the first beta came out, it only took 1 second for the support regeneration to kick in. And Fade, the invincibility lasts 1 second, which meant that even if you instantly got hit after getting out of Fade, you would still regenerate some health before the health regeneration was cancelled. So, yeah, you can imagine it was extremely hard to kill any Moiras in the first beta. Obviously now it's 2 seconds, while Fade is still very useful with the support passive, it's not quite as oppressive. Overall, Moira's just in a weird spot where, like, there's nothing wrong with her, really. Her damage is good, her healing is good, and I mean, she's very self-sufficient, and she's able to get around so she can heal everyone even when they're more scattered in 5v5. But at the end of the day, she just doesn't really have a game-flipping utility. Like, not even just she doesn't have utility, but like, even if she didn't have utility, if she had an ultimate that really flips games, that would make it alright. Because most supports do have ultimates that win games. You know, Nano Boost wins games. Amp Matrix wins games. Kitsune Rush certainly fucking wins games. And Transcendence wins games. I'd say that Rally doesn't so much win games, but it often prevents game-losing scenarios if used well. Because usually I think the best time to use Rally is like a second before you know the enemy's going in for a big push where they're going to commit a lot of resources. Sound Barrier, I think, is kind of similar to Rally, but a little bit harder to use, but still the same. It prevents game-losing scenarios, which does still translate to winning games, just in a way that's less proactive, so it's less useful, but still not to say it's not useful. And I'd say that I think that Valkyrie is the only ult in the game that's on the support category that is garbage. Coalescence, I wouldn't call it Valkyrie here. It's definitely better than Valkyrie. And I do think Coalescence can win games. But the thing is with Coalescence, I think Coalescence is only a game-winning ultimate when it's the perfect coalescence. And the average coalescence is just like, cool. You know, it's like, it's a help. It doesn't really flip games. The perfect coalescence is, of course, when you're getting a nice angle where you can heal basically your entire team simultaneously while still being able to deal damage to people on the other side of your team. But when you get a coalescence where you're only able to heal, or a coalescence where you're only able to damage, which is a lot more common, then coalescence is a lot less game-winning a lot of the time. So yeah, Moira just seems like an easy fit for C tier because she is very easy to play, and she does put out good stats, but she just doesn't provide any kind of game-winning factor or special utility that puts her ahead of anyone else. And this brings us to the most difficult part of the list, the B tier. There are 2 people I'm putting in B tier, and I struggled a lot to decide which of these 2 is better, and I still might change my mind at some point. Because both of the characters in B tier are probably the characters I feel the most mixed about in Overwatch 2. And funnily enough, they're both of the supports I have the most hours in. Ana and Brig. So let's start with Brig. It took me a long time to decide, but I think that Brig is the worst of the 2 of these. And it hurts me to say that, because that means I am ranking Brig 5th out of 8th. And I really think Brig is really good. I think she's almost slept on right now. But at the end of the day, every support is so good, and all of them are bringing a lot to the table. And I'm struggling to justify Brig being better than the other 4. So I just want you to know, when I say that Brig is 5th, that is not saying she's bad. I think that the 3 we just mentioned, that we just covered, those are the only supports that I would say aren't, like, great. Like, this point onwards, we're talking some, like, if this was an all characters tier list, we're talking A+ tier characters. Anyway, Brig is in an interesting spot. I was very worried for her, in fact terrified for her, before I played the first beta, when I heard that they were removing stun from Shield Bash. I mean, I was fully aware that this was a change that needed to happen. I agreed it was healthy for the game, but I was extremely worried because I thought she'd get something in return. And when I saw all she was getting is, oh, it's going to deal 50 damage and apply some knockback, I thought, oh god, are they just going to kill Brig? Are they just like, yeah, we've had enough of Brig, she's just going to get gutted and delete it from the game effectively. I mean, she can still play her, but why the fuck would you? I honestly thought it was going to be that bad. But that was because I wasn't aware that they'd massively improved the distance of it, and they had put it on a 5-second cooldown instead of a 7-second cooldown. I think these changes are far more relevant than the increased damage and knockback. I heard some people saying like, oh man, Brig can one-shot a Tracer now, and that really didn't help as well, because I was like, wait, you think the fact that you can do this is like, oh yeah, I can one-shot a Tracer now, guess Brig's good now. So first of all, that only works on literally one character in the entire game. Second of all, it's not really a one-shot. In fact, there's a lot of a window for this Tracer to just blink or recall and just prevent this combo. Oh, did I just... Oh, apparently I didn't swing it.
Try something different next time.
Let me try that again. Like, don't get me wrong, you can kill them fast there, but you're telling me that the Tracer doesn't, like, blink or recall at any point during that? And after all that, it's like, it only works on literally one character, the lowest health character in the game. Anyway, getting a bit sidetracked there. Yeah, this new Shield Bash is actually really good. The increased distance means it can actually be used as a mobility ability to actually get out when you're about to die, and it can still be used defensively, obviously just for the damage, because it's a very safe damaging move to use, since it basically never misses. And although 50 damage is underwhelming, I guess it's understandable considering, again, it never misses really, unless you're really bad, and you can do it while shielding, which obviously means it's very safe to put out there. And because it's now got a 5-second cooldown, it's very easy to just go in, shield back someone, kill them, other people start shooting at you, you put up shield, you regenerate health from the Inspire passive as well as the Support passive, and then when you're about to die, just dive right behind cover like that. You can get really far away and just escape like that. The main reason that I think Brig is good right now is because I think in Overwatch 2, with the lack of stuns, healing becomes really powerful. As well as the fact that there's less people on both teams to heal, but still the exact same amount of healing. Yeah, it makes it feel like people never die in Overwatch 2, because they're constantly being pumped full of healing, and the main way that you stop that is if they were out of position for a moment, you would keep them out of position. You would stun them, you would sleep them, you would force them to stay out of position so they couldn't get to their healers. But now, everyone can run away to their healers. So, I think as long as people are receiving any amount of healing, even if it's not that much, often that's enough to make them borderline unkillable unless, one, the person fighting them is simply just better at the game, which, I mean, fair enough, if they're just better at the game, they probably should get the kill. Or two, multiple people jump that one person. It is very difficult to kill even simple, like, squishies, like, I don't know, even just, like, even an Ashe. Like, even an Ashe in, like, a close-range duel, it's hard to kill an Ashe if she's being constantly healed just for standing near a Brig who's not even looking at her, unless you've got multiple people getting on her. I mean, this is not even, like, a tough character to take down, but you'll often find even characters like this are going to be really hard to kill while being healed by Brig's Inspire. And again, you might be like, well, why does that matter? That'd be the case for anything. That'd be the case for Lucio's healing aura. That'd be the case for Mercy. That is true. But for all those other healing auras, it's also taking the time as a support because they're having to focus them. For Brig, they're not actually focusing on the Ashe over there. They're beating the shit out of someone else with their shield and it's throwing out heal packs and all that. They don't care about what's going on over there, but they might not even be aware that the Ashe is over there. But they are healing them just for existing within 20 meters of them. So you can see why I thought area healing would be especially effective. On top of all that, Brig is a decent counter to Winston. And, well, you already know how good Winston is. Especially now that Zarya has gone through it, he's only looking like he's going to get better. So, yeah, I thought that Winston might counter Brig at first because, you know, your shield does nothing really against Winston. But now that shield bash is buffed, it's really easy to get out of Winston's range, and if he chases you with leap, you can cancel leap with the whip shot. Considering you have 2 knockbacks, and one of the knockbacks can also be an escape ability, and on top of that you have armor, and on top of that you have self-healing with Inspire even while taking damage, it is extremely hard for a Winston to actually focus you down as Brig, even if he catches you alone and out of position. So, yeah, you're actually a decent counter to basically the best tank in the game as well. So, yeah, you can see why I was hopeful for Brig. And yet she ended up on the bottom half of the list. Why is that? I hate to admit it. So I'm going to say this as a precondition first. If you're playing Brig in random games, randoms, and, like, just, you know, normal quick play games, I still think she's one of the best supports in the game. Like, top 3. Definitely. But if you're really tryharding, I've got to admit, I feel like Brig falls off because of one problem. You see, most supports, they do one thing or the other if they get dived. They either stand and fight, or they run. If you look at most supports in the game, obviously Zenyatta is made to struggle to do both of them. I guess he stands and fights, but, you know, that's not exactly in his favour. It's just the best option he has. Ana stands and fights. She has Sleep Dart. She simply has to land the Sleep Dart to survive, and if that doesn't work, hope she can stay alive with just good shots from her normal gun, combined with self-healing from, you know, your biotic grenades. Bap stands and fights. He's got the best DPS in the support category, except maybe Zen, but then he has a hit scan, unlike Zen, which can headshot. He has the best self-heal in the support category, and he does have something of an escape ability with Exo Boots, it's just not the best escape ability. Kiriko can run away. She can just teleport or climb up walls. Lucio can wall ride away. Mercy can fly away. Moira can fade away. And as I mentioned, Zen is literally designed to not be able to get away, but he gets Discord up to compensate. Brig is in a weird middle ground. You see, you could see it one way or the other. You could see it that Brig can do both, or Brig can do neither. Because, yeah, Brig can technically do both. Brig can put up a shield, boom, boom, stand and fight. She can do that, or she can also run. Now, what's the problem here? The problem is, unlike with all these other ones, where you usually have one very good option, like a great example would be Moira. Moira rarely can stand and fight unless, like, she's fighting someone who's a good matchup for her, like Genji, because obviously she can't. Deflect does nothing against her, and Genji's evasiveness doesn't do much either. But unless it's like a classic matchup that you should win, Moira doesn't usually stand and fight. She usually just runs. But the fact that she only has one option means that one option is really good. How many times do you actually manage to kill a Moira if she gets to use Fade? A lot of the times, you have to chase her deep into her own backline to get a kill on her, at which point you might be killed yourself for being so far out of position by chasing her. Moira's escape option is reliable and basically always saves her life. Brigitte's escape option is good enough, most of the time, just barely, but like, not ideal. Definitely the weakest escape option in the game except Exo Boots, but I mentioned already, Bapt has insane damage and great self-heal to compensate. So you've got the worst escape option on the game, and your option to stand and fight isn't much better because you don't have a stun anymore. You just have okay, undodgeable damage. But if you actually look at Brig's DPS, like pure DPS, it is garbage. Like, probably the worst in the entire support class. It takes so long to kill just one person. Like, even Mercy can kill these things faster than Brig can. It's just Mercy requires aim, and Brig doesn't.
Don't worry, I'll be right behind you.
You can kill way faster, even as Mercy.
Breaking me
So
down
yeah,
just builds me up.
you see the problem. So, I want to say this doesn't matter, because when I play my games, it doesn't matter. When I play my games, and I'm like, you know, using Shield Bash, a lot of the time I get away with a lot of aggressive plays. I can just get away with self-healing with Inspire and put up Shield and all that, and then Shield Bash out. But every now and then, there's just someone really good on the enemy team. And when there is someone really good on the enemy team, and they want to kill me, I can play, at least as far as I can tell, perfectly with Brig, and still die. Because, at the end of the day, although I am playing perfectly, what I'm doing doesn't require a lot of mechanical skill, so it doesn't get a big reward for it. Most of the skill in playing Brig is positioning and all that kind of stuff. And awareness, and just, yeah, more strategic than mechanical skill, obviously. So I just don't get the same damage potential. So naturally, any time that anyone jumps me, if they simply have above average skill, I cannot win. Even if I play perfectly, because what I have to do to play perfectly is easier than what they have to do to play perfectly. They get a bigger reward, ergo, they get more damage, ergo, if we both play perfectly, they still win. So, this is the big thing with Brig, is that when I play her for the most part, she feels really good. She feels like an unstoppable monster. But I know that the second someone on the enemy team is actually fucking good, they can shut me down if they really want to. And I can't really do much about it. Not that you can't do anything, but it's a struggle to constantly stay alive against them, and it takes up a lot of your time trying to play around them and make sure you don't fall for that one guy. And if you have a full team of people playing at that standard, then, well, you're fucked. So this is why, as much as I feel like Brig is really good, I do feel like I have to be honest and rank her at the number 5 spot. Anna is 4th, and she's extremely close to where Brig is, I want to say as a disclaimer. It is very hard to pick between Anna or Brig. And Anna's actually moved a lot. I actually had Anna at 2nd worst before. I always knew that Moira was going to be the bottom, but when Overwatch 2 first came out, I was thinking of putting Anna at 7th. She's moved all the way up to 4th the longer I've played her. Anna is the single hardest support to describe playing in Overwatch 2, honestly. And honestly, it's probably one of the main reasons it took so long to record these videos. You see, Anna is so much better and so much worse in so many ways all at the same time. It feels like she's almost a completely different character in Overwatch 2, despite the fact that none of her abilities really fundamentally changed. So yeah, she doesn't have to nade herself anymore so much now that she has the healing passive, which means she can offensive nade more, but I've already mentioned her offensive nades are really good in terms of their power level.
Go down. Double kill.
And yes, her sleep dart is now an absolute premium stun that no one else gets to have, but it's still a very difficult skill shot, and it's one that has a 15-second cooldown now, which is pretty long. And if you don't have that sleep dart up, I don't want to talk about it. If you don't have the sleep dart up when someone jumps you, or if you just simply miss the sleep dart, which is a pretty easy and understandable thing to do if you're getting jumped by, let's say, like a Tracer, or a Sombra, or a Genji, you know, the kind of people who are likely to jump you if you're an Anna, then yeah, pretty rough. Now, usually with that, I'd just be like, just take high ground. You know, just take high ground, play far back, make sure that you're not put yourself in a position where it's easy for for you to get jumped if you're at the back line, then you'll be fine. That worked in Overwatch 1, hit or miss in Overwatch 2. You can have games where you dominate as Anna just by sitting on high ground and pumping healing into your tank from a distance, but Genji can climb up walls. High ground doesn't matter against Genji, and Genji's quite popular right now. And Sombra doesn't really need to be able to climb up the walls, because she can just invisibly walk up the stairs to wherever you got to and just appear there behind you. So really, I don't know, the only flanker I could think of off the top of my head where it's like really like actually having high ground counters them is I guess Tracer. But yeah, a lot of the DPSs are very good at shutting Ana down. Obviously, any sniper DPS is better at shutting down Ana because, well, Ana has to land 3 shots to kill you. Whereas if you're Widow, you only have to land 1 shot, and if you're Ashe, you only have to land 2. So Widow and Ashe both counter Ana. As I say, Tracer only counters Ana if you don't take high ground, so I'll say, for fairness, I'll say not Tracer. Genji counters Ana, I've already mentioned. Sombra counters Ana. There's a lot of people. Hanzo, I would say, counters Ana. Again, 1 shot, he's technically a sniper. And even Sojourn, like, it doesn't happen to me a lot, but I've done it to other Anas as Sojourn. You often don't notice as Ana, you've got lots of things to look at the same time. A Sojourn who has full railgun charge 5 miles away, but has a clear sight line of you. It's so easy to not notice a Sojourn who suddenly stops moving, looks in your direction, and just right-clicks you in the head and kills you from full health from 5 miles away. Because the Sojourn most of the time isn't shooting at you because you're miles away, but then they get 100 railgun charge and then they instantly delete you from a mile away. So yeah, you can see how a lot of the DPS in the game now are really good at killing Ana. Now she gets no shields, no stuns, and no help from her off tank. So yeah, it really is just... Playing Ana is the most stressful experience now. Because it is just, every time you get dived, land the sleep dart, or die. Just land the sleep dart or die. Just be good at the game. Just simply be good at the game. That is simply the way it is right now. You cannot rely on people to save you or bail you out as Ana anymore. You just have to be good at the game. You just have to land every sleep dart. You just have to land every nade. You just have to evade every single dive attempt that happens on you. Now, in fairness, it's not like you instantly lose if you, do get dived and you miss the sleep dart. If the DPS aren't necessarily that great and you can actually strafe around and make them miss a few shots, and if you in return again simply skill diff them and land enough shots and use Bionade and all that, yeah, you can still win it. But the point is, no matter which way you slice it, you have to skill diff the person who's diving you every time you get dived as Ana. Now, if you can do that, Ana provides enormous value. She's almost kind of like Zen, only a little bit more, less intense than Zen. Because, of course, Zen really has nothing except the reliance on on the teamwork of his, teammates to save himself. Whereas Ana at least relies on her own skill, even if it's not always the most reliable. Again, if you do land every sleep dart, then it's really hard to kill Ana. And if it's really hard to kill Ana, then you're going to have the most healing on the team, most likely, and you're probably going to have a decent amount of damage too. And you're going to get a decent amount of kill confirms off of anti-nades, and you're going to get a whole bunch of nano boosts from all that healing, which are going to be game-winning ultimates.
You're powered up.
Guaranteed.
Get in there.
So, yeah, Ana's in a weird spot. I would say that Ana's always been considered a high skill ceiling support, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I think that before Overwatch 2, in Overwatch 1, because you would often get, some level of protection even from low-level teams as Ana, because they realize you should be protected, you should have shields near you, you should have people looking out for you if you get jumped. Ana wasn't the hardest in Overwatch 1. She was still a high skill ceiling hero, but as someone who played a hell of a lot of her in Overwatch 1, I would actually say that I still think that even Lucio, I think Lucio would probably be harder than Ana, because even though you don't have to think about the healing that much, wall riding and shooting simultaneously, it's one of those things, like wall riding on its own, yeah, it takes a bit of skill, but it's not like, the hardest thing in the world. Getting accurate headshots with Lucio, yeah, it's not easy, but, it's not the hardest thing. Doing both at the same time is a nightmare. And then trying to have good positioning and healing output at the same time as also doing good damage and also doing good wall riding, my god, that is a headache. So I'd actually say that Lucio was harder to play than Ana in Overwatch 1. Overwatch 2, though, I think that Ana is the single hardest support to play in the game in Overwatch 2. As I say, you simply have to skill diff every single person who tries to kill you. That is the only way I've gotten by on Ana. Like, I really put a lot of games into Ana in Overwatch 2 because obviously I was worried, like, it felt on my first games with Ana that she was garbage. And, I was like, did they just kill, like, my main character? And I've had to play her a hell of a lot to get used to playing her in Overwatch 2, and even still, I feel like how good she feels fluctuates wildly between games with her a lot of the time. But I think that's just down to the fact that, again, it depends on how many sleep darts I land. Now, you might say, well, if you're saying that one of the biggest criteria here is just being able to carry on them using purely your own skill, then wouldn't Ana deserve a spot higher than 4th and B tier? That is kind of true. However, there's one situation where I think Ana isn't necessarily entirely dependent on your own skill. I think another reason why my results with Ana have varied massively, having games where I absolutely steamroll lobbies with her, then going instantly into games where I barely get in more healing than our Lucio and barely get any damage done. The reason that happens a lot of the time, I feel, is both a combination of the fact that your effectiveness varies immensely with the amount of sleep darts you land, but also the fact that you are very dependent on your tank to succeed. Now, in fairness, this is true of just about every support. The tank is the best target to pump your healing into to generate ult charge 90% of the time. So, you know, I can't say that's exactly unique to Ana. However, I feel like Ana's the most affected if your tank is bad. You see, Ana doesn't get much ult charge for healing DPS. They don't have much health to heal in the first place. Even when they're on critical, it's a couple shots and they're full health. And Ana gets most of her ult charge typically from healing. So she kind of needs to pocket a tank to get her ult farmed. And that is how you do well with Ana, is obviously being able to farm nano boosts so that you constantly have multiple game flipping opportunities. And also just generally make your tank feel unkillable to the enemy team. That's how Orisa gets away with so much shit, is when there's an Ana who a few miles back that no one ever kills, just pumping it full of non-stop healing. But I do feel like sometimes, even if I am perfectly self-sufficient as Ana and do end up a game with only 1 death maybe or 2 deaths, that still, if my tank is simply bad, I'm just not going to get much healing, which means I'm not going to get much nano boost, which means we're going to lose the game a lot of the time. Now, the reason why Ana doesn't get knocked down as far as she does than the other supports like Mercy and Zen, again, Mercy requires you to have a good DPS to do well, and Zen requires you to have well, just generally good teammates who work to protect you, not necessarily a tank or DPS, to do well. In Ana's case, the reason why she's not knocked down too much is because, in fairness, as I already said, every support needs their tank to do well for them to farm ult charge. It's just that Ana gets the most hurt if their tank disappoints them. When you get that dream game where you do just get to sit back on high ground and pump healing into your tank the entire game, you'll be getting quintuple digit healing numbers in quick play games and be rivaling the DPS for the amount of elims you get while having usually 0 to 2 deaths by the end of the game. But then the other half of the time, you spend non-stop every second of the game from the moment you hear go running for your goddamn life, never able to secure any high ground because you're just trying to stay alive from the last attack when suddenly you get hit with another attack. I think I literally had a game on Colosseo a couple days ago as Ana where I literally did not stop running the entire game. I'm pretty sure I don't remember a single moment where I wasn't running. Running to the point because our teammates were critical and I was respawning. Running away from the point because unfortunately our teammates didn't stand in line of sight so I couldn't heal them, and then I was left alone and running away. Running because even though all of us are alive this time, the Genji just ran past all of them and no one looked at him and now is wall climbing up to me and shurikening me in the head. Running because even when I finally managed to land the sleep dart on the Genji and save my life, it turns out there's a Sombra invis in this room who uninvises and now is attacking me. Running because the enemy team has now swapped to D.Va and has decided I'm their prime target. Just a constant stream of, here's a problem that is extremely difficult for you to deal with alone. If you don't deal with it, then simply die. But again, it's understandable that Ana gets all these obstacles, because I do think in Overwatch 2, the way she is now, you can have teams that feel fucking immortal if an Ana goes unchallenged. And again, as much as anti-heal feels a lot worse now, at least sleep darts feel a lot better. In fact, that's the last thing. I think the one thing I could say is very solid about Ana, that's consistent across like all skill levels, is sleep dart is way more important than it used to be. I would say before, sleep dart was like not an unimportant ability, but not a huge part of Ana's kit in Overwatch 1, and bio grenades were a huge part of her kit. It's the opposite now. Bio grenades were a huge part of her kit because you couldn't get anti-heal in any other way, but now you have Junker Queen's ult. And while anti-nades are still better than Junker Queen's ult because they happen way more often, Junker Queen's ult is a replacement if you really need anti-healing. As well as that, I think Kitsune Rush, Kiriko's new ult, blows nano boost out of the water in terms of power level. while Nano Boost is still an insanely powerful ultimate, it's no longer like this irreplaceable utility, because I think in most situations Kitsune Rush beats it out. So the one thing that Ana has that no one else really has that makes her like extremely special, that like is an extremely powerful utility you can't get from any other support, is Sleep Dart. And as I say, it is the only stun left in the game, so it's valuable. It's just hard to use. With all that said, we're moving to A tier. Kiriko. Now, this is probably raised some eyebrows.
I'll find my
There's
own
definitely a lot
path.
of people who would consider Kiriko the single most broken support in the game right now. I want to clear the air a little bit. I'm obviously going to say that Kiriko is very good. I put her in A tier, I consider her the third best support in the game right now. However, let me explain where I think she's got a couple downfalls. First of all, I think her effectiveness is extremely matchup
Like a
dependent.
gentle rain.
That is because I think Kiriko's strongest utility, well, I say that. She's got two utilities, of course. She's got her Suzu and she's got her ultimate. But her ultimate isn't always up, whereas Suzu is something that can be up quite often. So I'm talking about Suzu here. Her most commonly used utility, and very powerful utility at that, is something that is extremely matchup dependent. A protection Suzu is very useful against an enemy Roadhog, because if they hook someone, you can deny their hook combo with invincibility. And it's extremely useful against tanks like Junker Queen or Reinhardt, because you can basically insta-cancel their entire ultimates with it. Junker Queen makes everyone anti-heal and take 100 bleed damage. Oh, never mind, you just denied all anti-heal on all targets and removed all bleed from them. So Junker Queen just lost all the self-heal, all the damage, and all the anti-heal from her ultimate, which she spent the whole game building up because it's one of the most expensive ultimates in the game. And you can just deny it like that. What's that? Reinhardt got a shatter and hit 4 of your teammates and is about to plow through all of them while they're helpless on the floor. You just teleport on top of them, throw a Suzu at the floor, they all instantly stand up and are invincible. The Reinhardt pin goes right through them, and now he's separated his team with a group of 5 full enemies between him and getting back to his team, and he's guaranteed dead. In matchups like
I'll
those,
find my own
it is
path.
completely unambiguous that Kiriko is one of the best supports in the game for that matchup. In matchups with much more generic characters that don't have any debuffs that can really be revoked with Protection Suzu, or any methods of doing like massive bursts of sudden damage that the invincibility could really help with, then Suzu ends up being mostly just a minor heal with a long cooldown that tends to prevent a small amount of damage, which is not that powerful ability for
pretend
someone
I didn't see
who
that.
doesn't really have any other abilities except just movement. I was even considering for a brief moment saying that Kiriko was mid, and you might be like, how the fuck could you say that? Because, well, as I said, these kunais, they're scary, aren't they?
Shouldn't have put your head
Well,
there.
here's the thing. Yes, people who are good at the game are going to land more headshots with kunais, but I need you to understand, the difference between a projectile and a hit scan is enormous, because look at how long it takes for this kunai to hit this headshot. Now, what if this bot simply walked to the left? It wouldn't hit, would it? Now, you might be like, okay, but then you could just throw it, like, here, if you knew it was going to throw it to the left. But then you would have to know the robot is going to walk to the left.
Back off.
And you can't really know when people are going to stop AD-AD strafing, when people are going to crouch and go under it. You can't really know if maybe, if you're throwing it from really far away, they literally even see the kunai coming at them and just walk away from where you threw it. You're not going to know if someone just walks in front of the other guy and it becomes a body shot because it hits the body of someone walking past them, even when it should have been a headshot. There are so many things that can go wrong. If this was a hit scan, I would
did
say
you
that your
learn?
fear of, like, cracked Kiriko's just landing nothing but headshots would be very well founded. Because with a hit scan, it is just point and click on the head. And people can just get very good at very quickly pointing and clicking on the head. Even if the head is very small, very far away, very quickly moving, people can learn to just be good at the game and always click the heads.
Bye-bye.
But when you're not actually trying to click on the head, you're trying to click on where the head is going to be in about 1.5 seconds, not knowing exactly where they're going to move, but just going off of what you generally feel like they might do, then, yeah, I think that skill can definitely help you in landing way more headshots. But I don't see us ever getting to a point, even with the most crazy skilled of Kiriko's, I can't see us ever getting to a point where it's like, oh yeah, they just land non-stop headshots every single time. They never land a body shot and they never miss. That's not happening.
Nice.
Now that being said, very good surgeons can get very good at predicting people's movements and very good at knowing how far away at certain distances they have to move the crosshair from where their head actually currently is to get to the point where they do land a lot of headshots. And I have had games, and I wish I could say this is consistent, but I feel like it's very inconsistent with like me with Kiriko. I have days where I'm amazing with Kiriko and the days where I'm off with Kiriko. But
That's the spot.
I've definitely had games where I'm landing like 75% headshots, like, and it feels like I'm just dominating that game, and like I'm basically a DPS while also being a healer, and I'm just like mowing through the lobby. It feels really good. But then there's games where I'm spending the entire game trying to land even just one headshot, and then when I finally land one, it's on a target that no one is actually shooting at, and I can't land another shot on them, so they just get healed up, and it didn't matter. I think the value of Kiriko's damage isn't going to be in a pure DPS. I think a pure DPS is high for a support, but I actually think that Zenyatta and Baptiste are both still going to outperform Kiriko in terms of damage output as a support. I think where she really is going to shine is being an effective main healer with a lot of utility who also has decent damage, and even though her damage on average isn't insanely high, when it spikes, it is insanely high, which means she can at least be a threat. Like, yes, the Kiriko on average isn't just going to 2-tap you every time and kill you out of nowhere, but you have to be scared that she could. And that does have an effect. Like, it's hard to measure because it's a psychological thing, but it does mean that you're going to make people forced to retreat just by looking at them sometimes as Kiriko, when otherwise they wouldn't. And it does mean that sometimes people are going to panic or just misjudge you. Off of this alone, I would have said that Kiriko is a fine support, like above average, but not really that strong, like a B tier kind of support. But there's something that changed my mind. I originally considered Kiriko's healing output to be medium,
Like a gentle
and that was because I wasn't playing Kiriko as a main healer. As I said, I think you can play Kiriko two ways. You can play her as an off support or a main support. You can have her played as like a full-on, just constantly heal and all that, or you can play her as a, you know, DPS. Now obviously, it's not like you have to go to one extreme or the other, but usually you will go to one extreme or the other, because usually you'll do main healer when your other support isn't providing a lot of healing, and obviously off support when like the other support is, you know, the main support and they're providing most of the healing you need. Now, when you play Kiriko as a main support, I think that is actually really valuable for a very mild reason, actually, like a surprisingly bland reason, honestly. It's simply, as simple as Kiriko's healing method is, it builds ult charge fast. And, well, I said Kitsune Rush I think is the strongest ult in the entire game. So, if Kitsune Rush wasn't such a strong ultimate and it wasn't so easy to charge it, then I would say that Kiriko would be like B tier. But then, she does have Kitsune Rush. An ultimate which I genuinely consider the strongest ultimate in the game, that she can build extremely quickly by spamming people with heals just by throwing good food into them. Which is not that hard to do. It's a little bit harder than Nurse's Beam, but it does auto aim a decent amount. So, it's not that difficult to do. And it's not like you're at risk of dying a lot as Kiriko. As long as there's always one other teammate far enough away to teleport to, then you can always just do that to survive. So why is Kitsune Rush so good? Well, simply put, it's nano boost but better, and for your entire team instead of just one person. Now, I will break that down a bit. That's the simple version. Obviously, it's not literally nano boost. There is one way in which nano boost is better, and that is survivability. With nano boost, you give an instant 250 health boost when you provide it, and the target doesn't just get plus 50% damage boost, they also get a 50% damage reduction while nano boosted, which is huge. People often underestimate that, but it's extremely hard to kill even squishy targets that are nanoed, even if they're making themselves an easy shot, just because of the enormous damage reduction. I mean, it's a larger damage reduction than Orisa's Fortify, and people complain about Orisa's Fortify, so that'll help put it in perspective. So in the situation where you've just got a tank alone on point, who needs to hold because it's overtime and he doesn't have any help, and you've just got line of sight of him, and you want to nano boost him to keep him alive, yeah, nano boost is better than that situation because you get an instant health boost and you keep them alive. But in every other situation, when you're actually using nano boost defensively to take ground, Kitsune Rush is better. Because of course nano boost, the main thing you're using is the 50% damage boost if you're using it offensively, and if you want a 50% damage boost, Kitsune Rush provides 50% faster attack speed and 50% faster reload speed, which translates to a 50% damage boost. In fact, although it can depend, it's generally better because it means you hit your breakpoint sooner. So, yeah, that's better. On top of that, there's the 50% increased movement speed, which is an extra benefit you don't get with Nano Boost. And then, of course, there's the real important thing, triple speed of ability cooldowns. That is insanely powerful with the right characters. You can have hogs that can hook every 2 and a bit seconds. You can have hogs that can self-heal every 2 and a bit seconds. I didn't mean to keep thinking of hog, but I just realized everything with hog is great, because whole hog Kitsune Rush is also an extremely powerful ult combo as well. It's much better than Nano Boost whole hog. I think that's because of the attack speed. It means that you get more damage in before they get knocked back too far away for it to not be effective anymore. I already mentioned Immortality Field is terrifying with this. Triple speed and Immortality Fields. And Echo can just absolutely obliterate people with this ult. I mean, sticky bombs coming every couple seconds, combined with the focusing beam, combined with the fly, just non-stop. You can just spam all of your abilities. Just press every key on the keyboard. And this applies to your whole team. And we've already mentioned how insanely that improves its potential. I mean, again, Discord Orb is 25% damage boost. Pathetic, right? For the whole team. Instantly becomes amazing. Kitsune Rush, as I say, is Nano Boost, but only for offensive purposes, not defensive, but to compensate for the entire team. Yes, I get they have to be in the Spirit Gates, but these Spirit Gates are not small. They're pretty big. And it's not hard to have your teammates be in this. I know that not all the time all 5 of you are going to be in this, but it's very common for 3 to 4 people to be in it all at once, which is an enormous amount of increased damage. So yeah, I actually think, purely for her damage output and healing output and utility, Kiriko is like just above average support, but not really insanely good. But what makes her insanely good is Kitsune Rush and the fact that she can very easily farm it while being very hard to kill herself. Not to mention, an interesting thing, for some fucking reason her hand actually has a hitbox and covers her head. There are multiple times where you can get in a situation where you should headshot Kiriko and her hand will block it. Because of where it's placed. This works against a Widow. There's a lot of times where you might land a headshot on a Kiriko, but it just hits their hand before their head and they don't get hit. Especially if they look upwards, it makes it harder for the Widow to shoot them. And especially Hog. I noticed it on Hog. If you have a Kiriko who has any kind of gradual heal effect, like a Lucio heal aura, combined with like, or like a Harmony Orb off of Zen, then it's actually almost impossible to kill her with the hook combo, because her hand will block the headshots from the hook. It still kills her if she doesn't receive healing mid-hook, but if she does receive healing mid-hook, you have to melee it to finish her off, otherwise she won't die. You have to kind of angle it a little bit to the side if you want it to kill her instantly, but then you give her a split second to teleport away. So there's no guaranteed way to get a good hook kill on a Kiriko as Hog, unless you melee afterwards, and they don't have any kind of healing. Anyway, that's enough about Kiriko. Let's get into the S tier supports. The 2 supports I consider the best. Second is Lucio. Which means you already know who's first if you've been paying attention, but let's just get to that when we get to that. I actually don't have much to say about Lucio, so I'll make this quick. I mentioned why I think area healing is very good. Lucio has unconditional area healing. I mentioned that slippery supports are really good because of the self-heal passive, and, well, I mean, this is the king of slippery you're looking at right now. This support is also extremely self-sufficient already, and I think the sound barrier got a lot better now that Genji's more prevalent in the meta because, it's amazing for countering Nano Blade. And obviously sound barrier wasn't that great before, but now it's actually a decent support ult. So yeah, it's really not that much to say. Oh, I guess one last thing. Rush is now a much more viable comp, and that means speed boosts are especially more effective in this game than they used to be. So yeah, Lucio just provides a utility that no other support does that's extremely relevant now. He provides area healing at all times. He's just generally the best suited to 5v5 out of all the supports, just with the kit he already had. Yeah, it just makes sense that he's really good right now. And of course, he's got a very high skill ceiling, so you can always get better with him. I wanted to make that quick so we can get straight to the point. Bap.
Another day, another battlefield.
I think that Bap is the best support in the game right now. Now, yes, I have watched Overwatch League. I don't actually watch it that regularly beforehand, but I've been watching a bit more of it recently. Now, I actually formulated my opinions on what I would do for this list before I watched Overwatch League. And I was quite pleased to see the opinions I had basically reflected what happened in Overwatch League. The one exception being that while pre-Zarya nerf, Lucio Bap were the supports of choice, so I was happy with that because, like, you know, I predicted Lucio and Bap were the 2 S tier supports. Post Zarya nerf, they swapped to Kiriko instead of Bap. Now, in fairness, I'm not an overplay player. I don't know why everyone switched to quick Kiriko instead of Bap. Now, you could say it's because Kiriko is better. Now, here's my... You can interpret it as cope, you can interpret it as whatever. My genuine opinion is, I think the reason why they swapped Kiriko is because with the team compositions they had to run in the post-Zarya meta, it didn't make sense to run Bap anymore. The reason for that is because Winston replaced Zarya, and every team was running Winston. And then because every team's running Winston, every team also wants to run Reaper. Now, Reaper is very powerful right now, but he's also got a very low skill ceiling, so I didn't expect you to see much use in Overwatch League. But he did, mostly because he extremely well counters Winston. Obviously, that's what he's made to do, is like make a Winston miserable. So, yeah, you can see how now that every team's going to be running both Reaper and Winston every single time, if you're running Bap, one of the great things about Bap is that you've got Amp Matrix, one of the best ultimates in the game. But Amp Matrix is basically entirely useless for Winston. I don't even know if it works on his right click, but even if it did, you wouldn't really want to use it with his right click. So it doesn't do anything for Winston. It does literally basically nothing for Reaper, because you would have to have someone on the other side of the Amp Matrix standing directly opposite Reaper for him to do a good amount of damage with it. And the only person that really helps is Sojourn. I mean, I guess it helps Lucio too, but Lucio's not usually getting kills with the Amp Matrix. So you can see why Amp Matrix didn't see that much use. And so they don't want to use Bap. That's my thinking. Now, in fairness, I could be wrong. There could be other reasons why they didn't want Bap, and if you know those reasons, feel free to tell me in the comments and I'll admit I'm wrong. But that's my interpretation of why they're not using Bap anymore, because I didn't see any outright explanation of the switch from Kiriko to Bap. Especially because, although I still think Brig is the best support to pick if you want to deal with Winston, I honestly feel like Bap would have done better against Winston than Kiriko. I don't know, maybe this is just like when you're a good Kiriko you can deal with him, but I feel like it's always really annoying trying to get out of the way of a Winston as Kiriko, because you burn your one teleport, and then Winston just leaps to where you teleported to, and then you just die. Unless you can Suzu into wall climb into enough headshots to save yourself, but like, you know, that's kind of a stretch. Anyway, enough talking about my opinions, let's actually get to why I think Bap is the single strongest support in the entire game. I think that Bap is currently fulfilling the roles of a DPS, a tank, and a support all in one. And I don't just say that to be like, oh, buzzwords, haha, funny. No, I really, really mean that. I genuinely think that Bap has the attributes of a tank, DPS, and support all in one. So for one, you're going to tell me this guy doesn't have, you know, DPS level damage. When he can two-shot like that. When we look at other DPS like Cass, it's like, oh, he can two-shot. Oh wait, my support, who has the exact same damage fall off, exact same spread, exact same, like, you know, hit scan instead of projectile, the only thing is he's got to control a little bit for recoil. Oh, he also two-shots it. In fact, I do more damage. Kree does 140 damage for a headshot, I do 150. 3 sets of 50.
That was a
so yeah,
fatal shot.
and it's not just Cass, because you might say, oh well, that's just because Cass is bad. What about Ashe? Ashe also two-shots. Ashe is certainly not bad right now. So yeah, I don't know. Bap's damage is looking pretty goddamn high for a support. Now again, you could say, well, isn't Zen's damage higher? I think the fact that Zen's damage is higher is fine, considering he has no answer if he gets dived, and on top of that, his shots are projectile, which means that it's not like if you have perfect aim, you're always going to land your shots, because people can always have the option to dodge them or just act unpredictably. Whereas with Bap, if you are simply always clicking on the head, you will never miss. You will always land headshots. So if you just get good enough with Bap, you can just constantly deal 150 damage to people on the other side of the map. Whenever you want, just by looking at them. And you get a lot of ammo in one clip as well. You don't have to reload as often as Bap as you do with characters like Cass and characters like Ashe. So yeah, so that's the DPS section covered. But DPS isn't all that matters. We've seen other supports with DPS level DPS. What about the tank thing? Surely you can't say that Baptiste is a tank. I mean, come on, he's only got 200 health. But you see, you're wrong there. So here's Junkrat. I'm only just using him because this is the only real reliable way I can damage myself inside the training range. I'm gonna put myself on 20 health.
Everyone's getting better.
So quick pop quiz. Do you remember how much healing you get off of regen burst? If you didn't remember, I get 100 instant health for pressing the regen burst button, and then regenerate an extra 100 health over the next 5 seconds. Meaning that if you do not kill a BAP within 5 seconds of starting to attack them, then they have 400 effective HP. Because they're going to save regen burst for when they're about to die, because that's like the only time you use regen burst. Now, okay, you could say, well, 400 effective HP was enough to be a low-end tank in Overwatch 1, but come on, in Overwatch 2, the lowest health tank is 425, and that's with self-heal and abilities that grant overhealth. So realistically, 400 health isn't enough to say, even as effective HP, that this is a tank character. Come on. Oh, but you'd be wrong to think it stops there. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, 400 effective HP, it's a lot, but like it's not enough to say they're really a tank. But then what if they have Immortality Field as well? Well, they throw an Immortality Field down, and this thing has 150 health. That means that, in a best case scenario for you trying to kill the BAP, has 550 effective health. In a best case scenario, you try to attack them, they instantly gain 100 health, so now that's 200 damage, but that wasn't enough to kill him. Now you need 300 damage, but by the time you have 300 damage, he now has 400 health, so now you need to deal 400 damage, and by the time you deal 400 damage, he throws down Immortality Field, so then you need to deal 150 damage to Immortality Field, and then once you've done 150 damage to Immortality Field, you need to deal an extra 20 damage to BAP to finish him off, assuming he hasn't regenerated any health at any point during any of this time from the support passive, or from just other supports coming to save him. So, if we assume all this, you have to do a minimum of 550 damage to kill BAP. If we're talking realistic, first of all, you're not likely to instantly snap to, oh, I hit set BAP to exactly 20 health. I am now going to destroy the Immortality Field and then go back to BAP. One, because you don't have perfect reaction times. I've seen a lot of people continue to shoot me for half a second before they realize I'm under Immortality Field and they can't hurt me. And two, because sometimes you will know the Immortality Field's there, but you'll just over-damage. I'll be on 50 health and you'll deal 100 damage to me, and you'll only deal 30 damage because of Immortality Field. So realistically, we're talking more 600 effective health. But that doesn't even take into account the support passive regen, which, considering that the entire time I'm doing all this, I'm going to be leaping around like this and shooting back at you, even assuming I never get any help, it's pretty realistic to assume trying to kill one single BAP who has his cooldowns available, you are going to have to deal about 650 damage on average to actually kill a single fucking BAP. Okay, so maybe BAP has DPS level damage on a support that's a hit scan that, you know, has 100% accuracy, no spread. Maybe BAP has effectively tank HP pool levels of survivability as long as he uses his abilities. But come on. Surely this comes at the cost of his healing output. And this is where I bring in the big guns. Baptiste is one of the highest healing output healers in the game. He is a main healer. He's a main support. Now, in fairness, he doesn't have to be. If you focus purely on damage, then you don't get so much healing with BAP. As well as that, people play very split up. Because of how much area healing BAP has, you don't get quite as much. But, in general, BAP is considered one of the highest healing output characters in the game. Okay, well, Moira has good damage and good survivability and good healing, but she's not OP because she doesn't have utility. Does BAP not have utility either? Oh boy. I think BAP has utility. I think that BAP might actually, if anything, have a little bit too much utility. As in, one-shotting people from 300 health alone utility.
Let them up. And stay down.
Yeah, that's 300 damage. That's 300 damage right there. This is with no one else shooting through it, by the way. Oh, I body shot it by accident. That's with no one else shooting through it. Your entire team can shoot through that thing. It doubles all damage and healing that goes through it. Oh, and did I forget to mention fucking Immortality Field? Remember the ability that initially made us think that BAP was OP when he was new? Yeah, I just completely forgot that was even a utility he had because I was too busy noticing his ultimate melting anyone that isn't a tank in one shot, even with no one else using the ultimate except yourself. On top of the fact he has a tank HP pool, on top of the fact that he has the most healing output out of most supports in the game, on top of the fact that he is basically insane with his damage output even without his ultimate. Oh my god. So yeah, I think that is the strongest support in the game right now. I understand if people think Kiriko or Lucio take priority. I think the top three are all pretty tight. As I say, I think Kiriko's been kind of overrated just because they're the new one, and because people think that people are going to land nothing but headshots with kunais when they just, you know, get good. And I do think that people are going to land a lot of headshots, but again, I don't think we're ever getting to the point where it's just going to be constant headshots with Kiriko. I just don't see it happening. With all that said, I think this is going to be my last attempt at recording this, so I think this is still probably nearly 2 hours, but whatever, I'll make it as short as I can in editing. Thank you for watching up through all this, and hopefully you've enjoyed this series. I also apologise that other content has been put basically entirely on hold in the meantime. I just want to say as a disclaimer that that's not because this has taken up all the time. The alternative to this was basically nothing. Uni work really piling up, so I haven't been able to work on much else, but as I say, I've done a poll on my Discord. I know what you guys, for the most part, what you want me to go back to and finish off that I've started on this channel and not finished. I'm currently looking mostly at making Skylanders content, which in fairness wasn't voted for that heavily in that poll, but I've already got some footage for a video put together, and I really feel like I should make some Skylanders content considering that's some of my most popular videos. I'm making some progress on the PvZ Heroes free-to-play account. I left it for a while, but I saw that you people really wanted to see that again, so I'll bring that back. And whenever I get a good long break, maybe over Christmas, I'm hoping that I can finally do my COD Zombies retrospective on Verrupt that I really should have done like a year ago at this point. As I say, I do plan on making more content on Overwatch 2, but I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do. Because I don't see myself doing plain gameplay videos. I feel like I'd want to make my content something a little bit more unique. So I imagine the content I want to make would be more talking about big concepts in the game or the state of the game. Or if I was to do something that's already been done before, it would probably be watching replays of other people's games and trying to give them some tips.